Long before airplanes or rockets, people looked up at the sky and dreamed of flying. They watched birds glide through the clouds and wondered if humans could ever do the same. These early dreams led to creative experiments, simple, magical inventions that tried to lift people and objects off the ground using fire, air, and imagination. One of the most enchanting of these inventions was born in ancient China. The flying lantern has been a part of Chinese culture for centuries, with its origins going back as far as the 3rd century BCE. Made from delicate rice paper, the lantern was powered by a small flame inside. As the flame heated the air, the lantern would rise into the sky, floating gently with the wind. The lantern's ability to soar above the ground was a beautiful and magical sight, and it quickly became more than just a novelty. In ancient China, flying lanterns were used for a variety of purposes. They were a common part of celebrations and festivals where people would light them to mark special occasions like birthdays, weddings, or the start of the Lunar New Year. The sight of hundreds or even thousands of these glowing lanterns rising into the sky was a symbol of hope, good fortune, and wishes for a prosperous future. The lanterns would dance in the night sky, creating a mesmerizing display that brought communities together in joy and reflection. But the flying lantern also had a more practical use. During times of war, it was used as a signaling tool. Armies would light and release lanterns to communicate across long distances. Because the lanterns could travel far and high, they were effective for sending messages or warnings during battles or for calling for help. The gentle, drifting nature of the lantern made it less likely to be noticed by enemies, making it a useful tool in the strategic planning of war. The concept of flying objects didn't stop with the lanterns. Over the centuries, many inventors and dreamers were inspired by this simple yet powerful idea of using air to lift things. Some created small flying devices with wings that flapped, trying to copy the movement of birds. Others experimented with large paper structures or lightweight cloths tied to baskets, hoping that fire or wind could help them float. There were also giant kites used to lift people slightly off the ground, often in military or ceremonial settings. These early inventions weren't perfect, but each one was a small step toward the dream of human flight. From the gentle glow of the flying lantern to these bold experiments with wings, fire, and air, early inventors laid the foundation for something greater. They didn't yet know how far their ideas would go, but they knew one thing: the sky was calling. In a small village in Europe, 2 brothers, Joseph-Michel Montgolfier and Jacques-Étienne Montgolfier, were about to change the world. They lived in Annonay, a quiet town in the Ardèche region of France. Born into a large family of 16 children, they were sons of Pierre Montgolfier, a successful paper maker. Surrounded by sheets of paper, fabric, and tools, they grew up with curious minds and clever hands. From a young age, Joseph Michel was fascinated by the way smoke rose from a fire. He began to wonder, what if heated air could lift more than just smoke? Could it lift objects or even people into the sky? This simple idea lit a fire in his imagination. When he shared it with his brother Etienne, they both became obsessed with the dream of flight. Together, the Montgolfier brothers began experimenting. Using their knowledge of papermaking, they built large balloon-like shapes from paper and fabric, then heated the air inside using burning straw and wool. The balloons would swell and float, then fall. Again and again they tried. Some balloons barely lifted off. Others caught fire or collapsed in the wind. But they never gave up. They spent months testing new shapes, better materials, and safer heating methods. Every failure taught them something new. Their small village watched as the 2 brothers chased a dream that seemed both magical and impossible. Yet Joseph and Etienne believed deeply. If they could just find the right balance of heat and design, they could build something that would carry a person into the sky. This was more than just science. It was hope, courage, and determination. The Montgolfier brothers weren't building a balloon. They were building a way for humans to touch the sky. One day, after yet another series of failed experiments, the Montgolfier brothers sat by a quiet stream near their workshop, feeling the weight of their disappointments. As they walked back to town, heads low and thoughts heavy, a passerby, an older man with a gentle face and curious eyes, noticed them. He had seen their strange balloon test from afar and asked, "Are you the brothers trying to lift the sky?" Joseph gave a tired smile. "Trying, yes. Succeeding, not yet." The man chuckled softly and said, "Then perhaps you should speak to someone who has succeeded. There's a man not far from here by the name of Louis-Sébastien Lenormand. They say he made a suit that lets a person float gently down from high places. He's called it the Parasuit. It works. I've seen it with my own eyes." The brothers perked up. Etienne leaned forward. "What does it look like? How does it work?" The man described what he had seen. A strange-looking suit with wide arms and cloth-like wings, folding in like a bird, opening as it fell. He didn't just imagine it, he tested it, high up from a tower. And he lived to tell the tale. That night, in their workshop filled with crumpled paper, soot stains, and the soft crackling of a fire, the brothers sat in deep conversation. The older man's words echoed in their minds. Etienne paced the floor. "If someone has solved falling, maybe he can help us solve lifting." Joseph nodded, staring at the flickering flames. "If we can understand how the air holds a man on his way down, maybe we can understand how to make it carry him up." They stayed up late talking, planning, wondering. At last, they made their decision. They would travel to Montpellier, the town where Lenormand was said to live, a place whispered about by inventors and thinkers. It would be a long journey, but they were ready. They had to meet the man who had already touched the edge of the sky. Several days later, the Montgolfier brothers arrived in Montpellier. The town was bright with life, markets buzzing, students reading in courtyards, and the scent of fresh bread drifting through the streets. Inventors crowded little workshops tucked between bookstores and coffee houses, some working on early mechanical clocks, others discussing glider-like devices, miniature steam-powered tools, or even ideas for flying cages powered by fire. It was a place alive with ideas and invention. They found Lenormand's home at the edge of town, surrounded by tall trees and strange wooden frames in the garden. But when they knocked, it was not Lenormand who answered the door. A graceful woman with thoughtful eyes welcomed them warmly. She introduced herself as his wife and invited them inside. As they entered, they noticed the room was filled with books, blueprints, and models of wings and strange machines. They explained their long journey and their invention, the balloon that could rise but would not stay. They shared their dream of flying, their failures, and their hope that Lenormand could help. She listened kindly, but before she could reply, another person entered the room, Lenormand's business partner, a sharp-eyed man with ink on his sleeves and the calm confidence of someone who knew how things worked. The brothers looked between them, surprised. Lenormand not only had a wife who supported his work, but also a skilled partner who built it beside him. The two exchanged a glance, then the business partner spoke. "You came a long way. I think he'll want to hear this himself." The wife nodded. "He's away today, but if you return tomorrow, he'll be here, and I know he'll be curious about your balloon." The brothers thanked them both. As they stepped out into the golden evening, the town of Montpellier seemed to shimmer with possibility. For the first time in weeks, their hearts felt light. The answers they had long searched for might finally be within reach. The following day, the Montgolfier brothers returned to Lenormand's home, eager to meet the man whose invention had inspired their journey. As the Montgolfier brothers made their way through the bustling streets of Montpellier that morning, the excitement of meeting Louis-Sébastien Lenormand weighed heavily on their minds. They stopped at a small market to buy food, the scent of fresh bread and ripe fruit filling the air. As they gathered their provisions, they overheard a conversation nearby. A man, deep in discussion with another, mentioned Lenormand's name in passing. The brothers paused, their ears perking up at the mention of the inventor. They exchanged a look, realizing they were only moments away from meeting the man who might hold the key to their dreams. Quietly, they continued on their way, following the sound of Lenormand's voice as he walked towards his shop, deep in conversation with the man. They knocked on the door, and as it creaked open, they were finally face to face with Louis-Sébastien Lenormand. His presence was commanding, yet calm, his eyes reflecting both intelligence and the weariness of someone who had seen the dangers of flight firsthand. With excitement and anticipation, the brothers explained their struggles with the hot air balloon. They shared their attempts, the failed flights, and the dream that still burned within them to lift themselves into the sky. They spoke of their idea to carry humans into the air, asking for Lenormand's guidance, knowing his experience could unlock the answers they had been searching for. Lenormand listened carefully, intrigued by their invention. His curiosity was piqued. He was no stranger to experimentation and had always believed in pushing the boundaries of what was possible, especially in the realm of flight. His mind immediately began to work, considering how he could help the brothers refine their design and bring their vision to life. But as the conversation continued, the door to the room quietly opened and Lenormand's wife entered. She stood silently for a moment, observing the exchange before speaking. "I've seen the risks that come with flight," she said, her voice soft but filled with concern. "I know how dangerous these inventions can be. Your hot air balloon, if it is anything like the parachute, could be a perilous venture. We cannot ignore the risks involved." Her words hung in the air, and the room fell silent. The brothers exchanged uncertain glances, aware of the gravity of the situation. Lenormand's wife had seen firsthand the dangers that came with her husband's experiments, especially with the parachute. She had been there when he had made his jumps, when he had risked his life in pursuit of his dreams. Her concern for their safety was not born of doubt, but of love and experience. Lenormand, however, remained calm. He turned to her with a reassuring smile, his voice steady. "I understand your concern, my dear, but we cannot let fear hold us back from progress. We will take our time. We will work cautiously, step by step. No risks, no rushing." His words, though filled with confidence, seemed to offer little comfort to his wife, but she nodded reluctantly, knowing her husband's unwavering determination. The tension in the room was palpable, but Lenormand's faith in their ability to approach the project safely seemed to bring some comfort to the brothers. The brothers, grateful for Lenormand's willingness to help, felt a sense of hope rekindled within them. They knew they had much work ahead, but they also understood that this meeting was the first step toward making their dream of flight a reality. With Lenormand's help, the brothers began their next round of tests with the hot air balloon. Each morning, they filled the vast silk envelope with hot air, and for brief, breathless moments, it would lift, hovering just inches above the earth before sinking back down like a sigh. Though the balloon flirted with flight, stable, sustained lift still eluded them. It was clear they were close, but not close enough. Yet hope did not waver. Lenormand, the brothers, and his wife stood side by side, eyes fixed on every rise and fall, hearts quietly echoing the rhythm of the balloon. Each trial taught them something new. Each failure whispered a clue. They knew the road ahead was uncertain and steep, but their determination burned brighter than the fire beneath the balloon. Together, they pressed on, step by step, toward the sky. After countless trials, most of which ended in frustration, the brothers were beginning to lose hope. The hot air balloon would rise slightly, hovering in a fragile dance for a moment or two, only to falter and fall, as if the sky itself kept pushing it back. Each attempt was met with the same cruel rhythm. Lift, linger, crash. The fire in their hearts dimmed with every failed flight. Their hands, once eager, now moved slower. Their voices, once filled with excitement, were quiet. The fabric of their hope was wearing thin. One chilly morning, as the balloon slumped back down for what felt like the 100th time, one brother let out a heavy sigh and said quietly, "Perhaps it's not meant to be." The other didn't argue. They packed their tools in silence, folding the balloon like a wounded dream. Ashes from the fire still floated in the air as they walked toward Lenormand's workshop, defeated, tired, and unsure if they'd ever return. Lenormand looked up as they entered. He saw it in their eyes before they even spoke. One of the brothers stepped forward and broke the silence. "We can't keep going like this, Louis. We've given everything. The money, the time, our energy, it's all slipping away. We're running on scraps now. Our families are beginning to worry." Lenormand nodded slowly, saying nothing. The other brother, more hesitant, added, "It's not that we don't believe in the dream. We do, but belief doesn't lift balloons. Maybe we're not the ones meant to do this." Lenormand walked over and stood with them, not as a leader, but as an equal, tired, worn, and just as human. I understand, he said gently. You've sacrificed more than most would. I don't blame you. There was a silence, heavy, respectful. Then he continued, but hear me, this isn't failure. Not yet. It's just a part of the path. Sometimes invention looks like madness. Sometimes progress looks like giving up. But truth doesn't care how tired we are. It only waits to be discovered. The brothers looked at him, torn between the comfort of home and the weight of the sky. Lenormand's voice softened. If you get any ideas, he said softly, send word. And if I find something that might work, I'll do the same. There was a pause, short, but full of unspoken respect and sorrow. Then the brothers left. Back in their town, they restarted their paper-making business, crafting fine sheets and textured scrolls. Life returned to routine, but the dream still lived, quietly in the background. Then one day, about a month later, a stranger arrived at their shop, holding a sealed letter. It was from Lenormand. Inside, in his careful handwriting, he wrote, I've made a breakthrough. I believe I've found the answer. Come back. I need you. This time, I'm sure it will work. Without hesitation, the brothers shut down their shop, packed their tools, and set off the very next day. When Lenormand saw them, his face lit up. Welcome back, he said, arms open. I've been waiting. Without wasting time, they followed him to the test field, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. Lenormand revealed his new adjustment, a small but powerful tweak he had been perfecting in solitude. They assembled the balloon, ignited the flame, and watched. This time the balloon rose, not in trembles or stumbles, but steadily, smoothly, like a dream finally finding its wings. Higher than ever before. The wind was calm. The structure held. The balloon floated with grace, painting a quiet miracle against the sky. It worked. There was a pause, a breath, and then eruption. The brothers shouted and embraced each other. Lenormand threw his arms to the sky and laughed with a joy that came from the soul. His wife clapped her hands, eyes wide with awe. Tears welled up. Laughter rang out. They ran toward the balloon like children chasing a miracle. They had done it. After all the failures, the waiting, the walking away, this was the moment that made it all worth it. To God be the glory, it worked. With their breakthrough, the brothers and Lenormand gathered in his workshop that evening, the golden light of oil lamps flickering on parchment sketches and scorched fabrics. The joy of their success still lingered in the air like the warmth of a fading fire, but now it was time for decisions. Over a humble meal of bread and roasted chestnuts, they discussed the future. If we're to take this to the world, Lenormand began, we'll need structure, funds, materials, and a strategy. No more guesses. We build this right. The brothers exchanged glances, then nodded. Agreed, one said. We can't afford to return to failure. So they struck a deal. Lenormand, whose parachute business was already thriving, agreed to sponsor the hot air balloon project in full. In return, he would receive 70% of the profits once the invention took flight, literally and financially. There was no resentment, only gratitude. The brothers knew they lacked the resources to take this any further on their own. Lenormand's belief in them wasn't just generous, it was the wind beneath their wings. They stood and shook hands, firm and full of purpose. A partnership was born, not just of profit, but of shared vision, mutual respect, and a hunger to reach heights no one had touched before. Now the path was clear. Refine the hot air balloon, test it rigorously, and prepare for its first public demonstration. The workshop that night buzzed with a new kind of energy, not the frantic, desperate pace of failure, but the focused momentum of purpose. They mapped out new designs, safety measures, presentation details, and even the colors of the balloon's fabric. Outside, the stars shimmered quietly, unaware, or perhaps deeply aware, that something was coming. The excitement of their success was palpable, but they knew the real challenge still lay ahead. Now they had to show the world. They decided to make more experiment before sharing the discovery with the public. It was early morning. The sun had barely risen, and a gentle breeze swept across the wide open field. No crowds, no fanfare, just the soft rustling of grass and the quiet determination of three men. Lenormand and the two brothers stood side by side, their eyes fixed on the tall, colorful balloon they had built with their own hands. It was a beautiful creation, its rounded shape made of sturdy linen, painted in swirls of deep blue, golden yellow, and fiery red. Thanks for watching. I hope you are enjoying this video. Creating each video takes me a very long time and a lot of energy. From writing the script, carefully selecting and placing images, to editing every detail and finally uploading. It's a whole process done with passion, just for you. If you enjoy the video, you can support me by subscribing, commenting, liking, or sharing. It won't cost you anything. It's completely free. At the end, please score the video from 0 to 10, where 0 is the lowest and 10 is the highest. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you liked, what could be better, and what you think should be added or removed. Your feedback while you watch means the world to me and helps me keep making content you love. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to bring you more great videos soon. It stood like a giant waiting to wake, anchored to the earth by ropes and quiet hope. This first test was simple. No passengers, just the balloon and the sky. They lit the fire carefully, feeding it with dry wool and straw. The air warmed. The balloon swelled, rising inch by inch. Slowly, steadily, it tugged at its moorings. Lenormand looked to the brothers, gave a silent nod, and they let go. The balloon rose gracefully, drifting upward through the cool morning air. It climbed higher and higher, reaching an astonishing altitude of about 6,000 feet. For 10 long minutes, it floated above the field, a quiet marvel against the sky. Then, gently, it returned to the earth. The landing was soft, controlled. Their first flight had succeeded, but they weren't done yet. Weeks later, they returned to the same field. This time, they brought a different kind of crew: a sheep, a duck, and a rooster. These animals would be the first living passengers. They placed them into the small basket beneath the balloon, securing them with care. The fire roared to life again. The balloon lifted. This flight climbed to about 1,500 feet and lasted 8 minutes. The men watched from the ground, eyes fixed on the sky, hearts pounding. When the balloon returned, they rushed to the basket. All 3 animals were alive and well. The sheep blinked calmly. The duck gave a quiet flap. The rooster looked slightly confused, but unharmed. Lenormand placed a hand on the side of the basket and smiled. The sky had accepted life, and now, they were ready for the next step. Despite the success of their recent breakthrough, Lenormand's wife couldn't shake her worry. She had always been afraid of flying, and now, with her husband so deeply involved in such a dangerous invention, her fear only deepened. One night, she awoke from a vivid, terrifying dream. In it, the hot air balloon soared high before plummeting to the earth in a fiery crash, and Lenormand was lost to her forever. Her heart raced as she woke, panic rising in her chest. Desperate, she clung to him, pleading, "Please, don't go through with it. You don't have to do this. I can't lose you." Lenormand, ever calm and steadfast, kissed her forehead and assured her the balloon is safe. "I've tested it. Trust me. This is our moment." His confidence was unwavering, but she could feel the growing weight of her fears. She didn't want to stop him, but the vision of her dream haunted her thoughts, leaving her heart heavy with dread. Lenormand, however, remained focused on the excitement of their upcoming public demonstration, and for now, his belief in the invention and in himself was stronger than any doubt. The day of the grand demonstration arrived, and the air was thick with excitement. The brothers, Lenormand, and his wife stood by the hot air balloon, nerves running high as the final preparations were made. The balloon, now fully assembled, stood tall and majestic, its graceful shape filling the air with anticipation. Its vibrant colors of red, yellow, and orange rippled in the sunlight, shimmering like silk against the backdrop of the clear sky. The fabric was flawless, each curve and fold a work of craftsmanship. The crowd began to gather, their whispers rising in volume as their eyes were drawn to the spectacle before them. Word of the event had spread like wildfire across the town and beyond, carried through printed flyers and written news. Flyers have been posted on every wall, boldly declaring, "Witness the first human flight. History awakes." People came from every corner, eager to witness the birth of something new, something daring. Lenormand's wife stood apart, her gaze fixed on the balloon, a mixture of awe and dread filling her chest. She struggled to steady her breath, the anxiety rising with each second. Every fiber of her being screamed for him to stop, but she couldn't find the words. Her hands trembled at her sides, her heart hammering painfully. She wanted to believe in him, to trust that the balloon was safe, but all she could see were the risks, the dangers that loomed high above. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, and finally it was time. Lenormand, along with the two brothers, moved toward the balloon. The flame flickered to life beneath it, warming the air, and the massive canvas began to swell. But it remained firmly planted on the ground. Lenormand stepped into the basket first, followed by the brothers, each movement deliberate, their faces a mix of excitement and caution. The balloon, now fully inflated, stood tall and steady, its colors glowing in the sunlight, but still rooted to the earth. It was a breathtaking sight, a symbol of human ambition and ingenuity. As the men entered the basket, the flame beneath them roared to life again, sending warm gusts of air against their skin. With a final check, the brothers and Lenormand were ready. With a final glance toward the crowd, Lenormand gave a quiet nod. The balloon was ready to lift. Slowly, the basket began to rise, the massive balloon filling with air, lifting from the earth with a steady, graceful motion. It ascended slowly, as if the sky was embracing it, and the crowd's cheers erupted into the air. But they felt distant, as if the sound were carried away by the wind. Lenormand's wife remained on the ground, her heart heavy, her eyes fixed on the balloon as it climbed. The world seemed to grow quieter around her, her thoughts clouded by the fear that still gripped her. She wanted so badly to share in the triumph of the moment, but all she could think of was what could go wrong. What if this time, things didn't go as planned? As the balloon rose higher, her gaze never wavered from the man she loved, high above the ground. The balloon was a speck now, but her heart remained tethered to it, her fears lingering in the silent space between them. The balloon floated like a graceful giant in the afternoon sky, its vibrant red, yellow, and orange fabric glowing in the sunlight. It drifted farther and farther away from the open field where it had launched, gently carried by the wind like a dream made real. Inside the basket, Lenormand and the two brothers peered over the edge, watching the world shrink beneath them, farmland stretching like patchwork quilts, rooftops like scattered tiles, rivers glinting like silver ribbons. Lenormand held the edge of the basket, his eyes calm, his heart steady. This was it. This was the future he had imagined. Around him, the brothers laughed and pointed, filled with awe and disbelief. For the first time in history, they were not imagining flight. They were living it. Back on the ground, the crowd watched in stunned silence. A wave of murmurs and gasps passed through them as the balloon drifted beyond the far fields, its silhouette slowly shrinking. Lenormand's wife stood among them, hands clasped tightly, eyes never leaving the sky. Her heart thudded with both wonder and fear. Around her, some began to whisper, "They've gone too far. Will they come back? What if they vanish into the clouds?" But she didn't speak. She couldn't. Her breath caught with every second the balloon stayed in the air. Then, just when the balloon seemed to be fading into the distance, it began to turn. High above, Lenormand adjusted the ropes with practiced hands. The wind had been kind. They were drifting back toward the field, back to where it all began. The brothers looked down, recognizing landmarks, pointing excitedly. On the ground, someone screamed, "They're coming back." The crowd surged forward, eyes widened. Cheers started, small at first, then rising like thunder. The townspeople watched in awe as the balloon descended gracefully, the flame controlled, the basket steady. With the same elegance it had risen, the balloon touched down, softly, perfectly, in the very spot it had lifted from. The moment the basket hit the ground, Lenormand's wife broke into a run. Her feet carried her through the crowd, past people shouting and clapping, tears streaming down her face. She pushed through the last few feet and wrapped her arms around her husband before he could even step out fully. "You came back," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. "You came back to me." Lenormand held her tightly. "I told you. I'd always return from the sky." The crowd surrounded them, cheering wildly. Some clapped, some wept, others simply stood in silence, overwhelmed by what they had just witnessed. Children ran through the grass pretending to fly. Old men stared at the heavens as if seeing it for the first time. Today, something had changed. The sky was no longer unreachable. And in the center of it all stood Lenormand, his wife by his side, the great balloon behind them. Proof that dreams could rise and return. The sun dipped low behind the hills as the crowd slowly dispersed, their voices buzzing with excitement, wonder, and disbelief. Men, women, and children who had witnessed the flight couldn't stop talking. They carried the story like fire in dry grass, spreading it to every corner of the town, every nearby village, and every place they passed. By nightfall, the story had already begun to take root far beyond the borders of Montpellier. Word traveled faster than anyone could have imagined. Flyers were reprinted and rushed to distant cities. Handwritten letters carried tales of the miracle in the sky. Newspapers dubbed it the day man touched the heavens. What was once an idea had become an unstoppable force. And soon, the world responded. Inventors from across Europe began arriving in Montpellier. Some came out of curiosity, some out of admiration, and many with the hope of working alongside the geniuses behind the balloon. The Montgolfier brothers and Lenormand were no longer just names. They were now respected voices in a growing community of skybound thinkers. The brothers were seen not just as craftsmen, but visionaries. Lenormand, once known only for his parachute, had become a symbol of courage, collaboration, and foresight. Investors, too, wasted no time. They came with gold, silver, land offers, and even ships full of materials. Many begged to have a stake in what they now called the future of transportation. Rich merchants, scientists, and noblemen stood in line just to speak with the team. Proposals poured in. Partnerships were offered. The trio had to hire scribes just to keep up with the growing list of opportunities. Then came the letters from beyond the state. 3 governors from outside Lenormand's region personally sent invitations, each requesting a private demonstration in their territory. One even offered to build a permanent sky field just for balloon travel. But what stunned them the most were the messages from across borders. Countries they had never even dreamed would hear of their names were now sending envoys, requesting meetings, and offering sponsorship. With all this attention, the team made a decision that would shape history. They would open a shop, an official workshop to build and distribute hot air balloons. Flyers were printed again, this time grander than before in bold, proud ink. Coming soon, the Sky Workshop, official makers of the Great Balloon. And the message continued. Prepare for the greatest flight the world has ever seen. A final demonstration of our mastery of the skies. All are welcome, scholars, kings, inventors, and dreamers. Lenormand, the brothers, and their growing team began the preparations. No longer just a town event, this was history in the making. Royalty, scientists, curious farmers, and school children from all over were preparing to come. The city buzzed like a hive. Blacksmiths forged new frames. Tailors stitched elegant flags. Artists painted scenes of the last flight. Cooks prepared for feasts, and carpenters built stands to hold the massive audience. In the center of it all stood the hot air balloon, grander than ever, ready to rise again. And so the world waited. The day had finally come. It was November 21st, 1783, a date already whispered among scholars and tinkerers as the day the sky would open forever. Paris, vibrant and humming with anticipation, was unrecognizable. Streets overflowed with travelers, dignitaries, governors, and common folk alike. From balconies, rooftops, and wooden stands hastily constructed overnight, people gathered shoulder to shoulder, craning their necks toward the heavens. Above the city, a magnificent hot air balloon stood ready, a giant, elegant orb stitched in sapphire and gold, adorned with symbols of the sun and stars. Its basket, large enough for 2 men, carried Jean-François de Rozier and the noble Marquis d'Arlens. They were to become the first humans in history to ascend freely into the air, untethered by ropes or fear. Below, The crowd held its breath as flames licked the air and the balloon began to rise. Among the audience were inventors and leaders from across Europe. 3 governors sat together in a velvet-draped balcony. Nearby, Lenormand stood with his business partners, the brilliant Montgolfier brothers, and beside him, André-Jacques dressed in his acrobat's attire, his eyes fixed on the rising balloon. Lenormand's wife gripped his arm tightly, her heart pounding, not from fear this time, but from awe. The balloon lifted slowly at first, like a giant bird testing its wings, and then rose confidently into the clear November sky. Gasps of wonder erupted through the city. Children shouted. Musicians played spontaneous notes in the streets. The crowd was alive. For 25 breathtaking minutes, Rozier and D'Arlen soared across Paris. The balloon drifted gracefully over rooftops and rivers, casting a soft shadow on the marveling city below. They covered nearly 6 miles before descending, forever immortalized as the first to master human flight. But just as the audience began to applaud, thinking the show was over, a voice cried out from a nearby platform. It was time for the second act. André-Jacques stepped forward. Another balloon, specially prepared, stood behind him. This one smaller and designed not for drifting, but for daring. The crowd turned, confused and curious. Lenormand nodded silently to his friend. Garnerin smiled, saluted the governors, and climbed into the basket with nothing but a strange-looking suit strapped to his back. The balloon lifted quickly. Higher and higher it climbed, until Garnerin was just a speck against the vast blue canvas of sky. And then it happened. He leapt. Gasps turned into silence. Every eye was on him. His body tumbled through the air before the Parasuit, Lenormand's perfected design, unfolded like a giant flower. He floated, not like a leaf, not like a feather, but like a master of the air, steering and diving with acrobatic grace. He flipped. He spun. He stretched his arms and twisted midair. An airborne ballet performed before tens of thousands. Then, gently, he touched down in the heart of the field, landing with such poise it looked rehearsed by angels. The crowd erupted. People screamed, wept, clapped, and danced. Some threw their hats into the air. Others fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the miracle they had witnessed. But Garnerin wasn't done. Before the applause could settle, he ran toward a second balloon waiting at the edge of the field. With his parasuit still strapped on, he climbed into the basket again. This time, he didn't wait to drift too far. He leapt almost immediately, executing a spiral dive, spinning like a top, and then leveling out before landing once more to roaring cheers. It was chaos in the best way. Governors stood and applauded. Inventors scrambled to take notes. Artists frantically sketched the scene. And Lenormand, he simply smiled, his wife clinging to his side in joy and disbelief. This was no longer an experiment. It was art. It was spectacle. It was history. And the world would never be the same. After several amazing demonstrations, Lenormand and the brothers stood on stage in front of the huge crowd. The air was filled with excitement as people waited to hear what would come next. Lenormand stepped forward, his voice clear and confident. "What you've seen so far is only the start," he said. "We're not just going to touch the sky, we're going to conquer it." The crowd fell silent, eager to hear more. "We will travel farther than anyone has before, both in distance and height," Lenormand continued. "We will soar into the clouds, beyond what anyone has ever imagined." A mix of awe and fear spread through the crowd. People whispered to each other, their eyes wide. The idea of going so high and so far was both thrilling and frightening. Could they really do it? Lenormand smiled, sensing the crowd's nervousness. "This is more than just a flight," he said. "It's about what we can achieve together. We will show the world that the sky isn't the limit. It's just the beginning." The crowd, once filled with doubt, now buzzed with excitement. They realized this was something bigger than they had ever seen before. The adventure was only beginning. Lenormand's wife stood at the edge of the crowd, her heart heavy with worry, though she said nothing. She held their son in one arm, her other hand resting lightly on her chest. Her eyes never left her husband, who stood ready with the 2 brothers, preparing to board the massive hot air balloon. The brothers climbed in first, followed by Lenormand, who gave his wife one last look before stepping into the basket. His expression was focused, his mind fully on the task ahead. The balloon, glowing under the sun. Thanks for watching. I hope you are enjoying this video. Creating each video takes me a very long time and a lot of energy. From writing the script, carefully selecting and placing images, to editing every detail and finally uploading. It's a whole process done with passion, just for you. If you enjoy the video, you can support me by subscribing, commenting, liking, or sharing. It won't cost you anything. It's completely free. At the end, please score the video from 0 to 10, where 0 is the lowest and 10 is the highest. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you liked, what could be better, and what you think should be added or removed. Your feedback while you watch means the world to me and helps me keep making content you love. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to bring you more great videos soon. Stood as a symbol of all the hard work and dedication they had put into the invention. As Lenormand and the brothers settled into their positions, the crowd's murmurs grew louder with anticipation. Lenormand's wife tightened her grip on their son, her gaze fixed on the balloon as it began to lift off the ground. The wind stirred, and with a great whoosh, the balloon began to rise. At first, it was slow, the massive fabric stretching upward, catching the air bit by bit. The crowd held its breath, watching in silence as the balloon lifted higher, just a few feet at first, the flames of the burner warming the air beneath it. The balloon tugged gently at its ropes, and then, as if gathering strength, it began to rise more steadily. Each moment was filled with tension as the balloon grew higher, the ropes creaking as the lift increased. The crowd's excitement grew with each small shift of the balloon, inching its way toward the sky. With a gentle but powerful push, the balloon rose faster now, lifting higher and higher, its fabric glowing brightly against the clear sky. As the balloon climbed, it began to sway with the wind, the huge flame at its base fueling its ascent. Higher still it went, the ropes now fully slack, the ground growing distant below. It soared gracefully, leaving the earth behind, becoming a small speck in the sky as it floated toward the clouds. Lenormand's wife, still holding their son, watched, her heart in her throat. The balloon rose higher and higher, until it was just a dot in the sky, the crowd below watching in stunned silence. The wind carried it off course, and the balloon drifted further away, swallowed by the vastness above. The crowd watched in awe as the balloon rose higher into the sky. Cheers erupted like thunder, a celebration of human triumph and daring ambition. But gradually the clapping slowed. The laughter faded. A hush swept through the field like a sudden wind. The balloon climbed until it became no more than a dot in the heavens, a speck in an ocean of blue. Then the wind shifted. It began as a whisper, restless, uncertain. But with each passing minute, it grew stronger, more insistent. The people squinted upward, shielding their eyes from the sun. Hours passed. What was once excitement became concern. The balloon was gone from sight. The sky, once a backdrop of wonder, had become an empty stage. Tension spread like cold fog across the field. "Where is it?" someone whispered. "I can't see it anymore," said another, their voice thin with dread. Mothers clutched their children tighter. Men removed their hats in anxious silence. The once boisterous crowd now stood motionless, watching the sky like mourners at a funeral with no coffin. At the edge of the field, Lenormand's wife stood still, her son clutched tightly in her arms. The child's small fingers dug into her shawl, sensing something was wrong. She didn't speak. Her face was pale, lips parted, her breath caught somewhere between hope and fear. Her heart thudded heavily in her chest, an aching drumbeat of uncertainty. And then, there, look, all heads turned. Far in the distance, almost invisible against the now golden afternoon sky, a shape, soft and slow, descended like a drifting leaf. The balloon. Cheers burst out. People laughed with relief. Hands were raised, eyes bright. It was returning. It was safe. Lenormand's wife pressed a trembling kiss to her son's forehead. Her heart, locked tight for hours, began to relax. The crowd erupted again, joyous and alive. The balloon was floating steadily now, closer, lower, nearly within reach. But just as it hovered above the open field, A sudden, violent gust roared from the hills. The wind hit like an unseen beast. The balloon jolted, twisted. Screams erupted as it lurched violently, spun, and was yanked back into the sky. It rose, not slowly, not gently, but wildly, as if being swallowed by the heavens. No, someone screamed. The air turned into chaos. People cried out, reaching skyward as if their hands could pull it back. Lenormand's wife staggered forward, a cry tearing from her chest. Her child clung to her, now sobbing in confusion. The balloon, once a symbol of progress and dreams, was now a vanishing dot against the darkening sky. Gone again, this time dragged higher, farther, beyond the reach of hope. And then silence. No one moved. Time passed. The crowd dissolved slowly like melting snow. Some ran, afraid. Others wept or stared blankly at the sky. The once celebratory field was now scattered with discarded ribbons, overturned carts, and the echo of a dream gone wrong. But Lenormand's wife didn't move. She stood there, legs shaking, clutching her son. Then, gently, as if surrendering to gravity, she sank to her knees. Her shawl fluttered in the wind. Her child curled into her lap, and she held him close, shielding him with trembling arms. Her eyes, red, swollen, unblinking, remained locked on the place in the sky where he had last been seen. She raised one hand, slow and deliberate, and pointed upward. Her finger trembled. Her arm ached, but she held it there, defying the emptiness of the sky. Around her, the world had become still. And then they came. Lenormand's family, breathless and disoriented, pushed through the remaining crowd. His father's silver hair clung to his forehead. His mother's hands were clasped tightly in prayer. His brothers ran ahead, calling out, their eyes scanning the horizon in desperation. They found her there, kneeling in the middle of the empty field, surrounded by silence and wilted grass. They surrounded her slowly, reverently, unsure of what to say. She didn't turn to them. She didn't speak. She only pointed. The sky above was endless, vast, and cruelly beautiful. The rising moon was now faintly visible, like a silver coin in a fading sky. Wind tugged gently at their cloaks, whispering things no one could understand. Her father-in-law knelt beside her, placing a weathered hand on her back. Her mother-in-law cupped the child's cheek, wiping away his tears with trembling fingers. The brothers stared upward with hollow eyes, straining to see even the smallest shape on the horizon. But there was nothing. Through her silent sobs, Lenormand's wife finally spoke, not in a wail, not in panic, but in a whisper made of heartbreak and hope. He's still up there. They looked where she pointed, into the infinite distance, where sky met sky and dreams were swallowed. And though they could see nothing, they stood with her, together, silent, waiting, not for a miracle, but for a man who dared to dream too high.